questions to rebuttal. Firstly, what's really happening in society? Second, how do people really react? And third, will academic institutions take this kind of grant? So firstly, what's really happening in society? Okay, here's the ineluctable reality of what's genuinely going on in the real world. Okay, tobacco companies or companies that fund fossil fuels like BP have a lobby group. That lobby group then goes out funding research because there's research in society that says polluting the world is pretty bad, which is antithetical to their business model, right? Smoking is really bad, which is antithetical to their business model. So they need a countervailing narrative. But not only that, they know that people in society are not idiots. They're not going to go out there and when the tobacco company says that smoking isn't bad for you, they're going to believe them. So what happens in the real world? In the real world, tobacco companies go out there to academic institutions, give them money to have research, to come out with some sort of research that says it's not as bad as you think. Now, we agree that yes, you can't falsify results to a very large extent. But what you can do when you give people money is that you can very specifically choose the kind of research that comes out of this. Like, if it were genuinely true, then none of these academic institutions publish this kind of research that says smoking isn't as bad as it is, or that global warming doesn't exist. The first question you have to ask is, where does the narrative come from in the first place? Because there are people in the US that genuinely believe that global warming doesn't exist and that smoking isn't as bad for you, right? Harvard, there's through a very popular series of lectures on Harvard, online through Harvard University, they did a research paper where they said that every research that was backed by the tobacco lobby came out and said that tobacco isn't as bad as you think it is. Every research paper that came out that was backed by companies that were polluting the world like BP or Shell said that global warming doesn't exist or global warming isn't going to hit us at least for the next 100 years. That's why people in America genuinely believe that global warming isn't going to hit us in the next 100 years. The problem with this is that their side, there actually are institutions that think this. Okay, so how do people really react in society, right? Like, okay, we need to understand that people understand how the world works through the use of media and through things or like watching news and newspaper, right? Like in America, there's a wide spectrum of what kind of newspapers there are, right? Like we have people like who are the same people that run Fox News are the same people that have the money that back tobacco lobbies, and it's the same people that run Republican campaigns and go out there and say that women who are raped can't get pregnant, right? So under these circumstances, these are the same people when Fox News wants to run a report that says global warming isn't as bad as you think it is, or when Republican wants to go out there and say global warming isn't going to hit us for the next 100 years, they will then need to fact check it. But where do they go to get this kind of fact check information, right? They will go to the same universities, although not Harvard, because Harvard will never, we concede that Harvard will probably never take this because they don't need money. They'll go to some random university that accepted the money from these institutions and say, yes, this university did this specific research paper and said that, yes, global warming isn't as bad as you think it is. So that's the unfortunate reality situation when the average lay person who's not media literate can't understand whether or not what is being told is necessarily true, believes in this. Yes, sir.
How likely is this random university going to affect the sheer weight of academic opinion that shows that global warming is true?
Yes. We agree. That's why the overwhelming majority of Singaporeans believe that government exists. But in America, where people believe in Fox News, where people believe in the crazy Republican that goes out there because he quoted some random university where people don't understand, they genuinely believe that global warming isn't going to hit them. That smoking isn't as bad. That's why in 1950s, 1960s, for at least for the past two decades after that, people didn't believe, or the overwhelming majority of people in America didn't believe that smoking was bad for you. Right? It wasn't until the 1970s when people finally came out and said, actually, all the research papers that have been funded are funded by tobacco lobbies. Therefore, we are creating a countervailing narrative. That's why people believe in that. This is an academic institution. You genuinely, as an average person who's not as media literate as we hope you be, will believe in this kind of thing. So we think, yes, okay. So third question, how will universities react in this situation? Right? Like they said, reputable institutions will never take this. We agree. Reputable institutions like Ivy League schools have enough money and have no incentive to do this. It's the other alternatives, right? They consider themselves that when it comes to research grants in universities that are not as popular, people don't have the money, right? They're probably also not as academically reputable, so they have nothing to lose. They would rather take the money and not necessarily force results, but choose very specific results to come out with these kind of things. Because at the end of the day, these people have tenure and they have incentive to stay on, and they don't have the money and they want to do their own kind of research, right? As they said. Okay, so now more importantly about the idea of research, right? They said like a couple of things. They said like they want first mover advantage, like they are the main drives of researchers, and that we have the connectivity between these. Okay, question: how is this not mutually exclusive to outside the house? We said companies like Tesla can do their own research in their own backyard, yes. Right? Like we don't see why you have to fundamentally the possibility of academic institutions. Right, like you just said about this idea about like they are the main drivers of research because they have the money and the capacity to fund these kind of things. Yeah, if you have the money fund these kind of things, then hire your own professors or hire your own people with a PhD.
Yeah.
Hire them under the purview and the name of BP or Shell, so when they come up with their own research or when they come up with whatever it is, they know that it is a company that's doing it, not an academic research. So you don't taint the discourse in our society. We think like, yes, it might not happen all the time, but the chance of screwing people over on what genuinely happens in our society is the harm I'll bring out later myself. It's too high a risk for us to play in our society, something we cannot afford to do. But then they say this like really weird thing, right? Like they say there's a connectivity and they'll have research thing, right? Like, okay, connectivity is not mutually exclusive. If you really are a multi-billion-dollar company, you can hire multiple different people in multiple different expertise or fields, put them in your own backyard, give them a building, do their own same research, right? We don't see why it has to be a university building to do so. But then they say, okay, this is really a good thing because there's an academic like countervailing narrative like we can truly discuss. Let's first recognize that more often than not, students who are given a lot of money to debate academic research, more often than not don't want to risk like having a countervailing voice to go against the professor's review because number one, they've been paid a lot of money, they've been given the money to do so, and it might affect their grade. But more often than not, professors, the professors that accept these kind of grants, more often than not have an incentive to continue receiving these grants, therefore are not going to be the countervailing, are not going to be the counter voice to do so. They will just accept the money and happily do the research that they have been intended to do. Okay, so my substantive argument, how this threatens society and how you better discourse society. We need to recognize that unfortunately, the things that threaten our society today are things like global warming, which threatens the whole of society, right? How outside betters discourse. Because here's the thing, right? When we no longer have these crazy people going out there and saying that global warming doesn't exist and that smoking isn't bad for you, guess what happens? People genuinely believe that global warming does exist and global warming will hit you. The problem with global warming is that it threatens the entire world population. There is no reset button, right? If we screw this up, the whole world dies, the whole world is screwed in a situation, right? When it comes to things like smoking or anything that's bad for you, the individual, right? People genuinely believe that smoking has no harm to you, but the unethical reality is that smoking does have harm to you. So on two levels, we do things that are better. First, we allow individuals to make proper decisions on what they genuinely believe affects them as individuals, right? Because right now, there's a discourse that says smoking is bad for you, smoking is not bad for you. So people who continue smoking in America will normally buy society and say, okay, I believe in the research that smoking is not bad for me. As compared to the people, and when it comes to global warming, this is fundamentally a bad thing because global warming threatens everything from our economy to our society to the politics of our situation. We think fundamentally this is something that we cannot live, because it threatens our society as a whole. We are very proud of the rules.